Hi everyone and welcome to another episode in this Flask series. Now before you start this video, please make sure that you go down to the comment section and give your feedback about this entire series. Because this is the last episode that we will be adding some features to that website. So there's a great chance that if you watch this video, you'll probably watch some of the other episodes of this entire Flask series. So I really want to know what is your opinion about this entire series, for good and for improvement as well. So make sure please to go down below and give your personal feedback about this entire series. Okay, so in this episode we are going to add the functionality of selling an item. Now throughout this video I'm going to show a lot of areas that is going to be pretty much similar to what we have done to implement the logic of purchasing an item. So this is going to be quite interesting to implement the opposite action from purchasing. Let's go ahead and start. Alright everyone, so I'm currently logged in with the latest user that we have created, which its name is GSC8. And if you remember, with this user we purchased an item that its price was $1,000, and this is why our budget is 0 over here. Now to really show you how we should display the owned items for a specific user, I am showing you our page because I imagine that we could basically create some bootstrap cards, and by saying cards I mean like a nice looking square shapes where we will display the owned items that the user has, and each of those cards will include some buttons that says sell this item. So let's go ahead and start working on this. But first, we should be able to query all the items that the current user owns. So this is why I will go to my PyCharm and I will start by going to routes.py. And if you remember, we have this built-in object that says current user, and it knows how to identify the object of the user that is currently logged in. So we could write a query that basically filters out the items that the current user owns. So let's go ahead and do this right under our market page route. But it totally makes sense to write such a filtration under the if request.method equals to get conditional. So I will go here and I will say something like owned underscore items equals to item.query dot filter underscore by, and as the expression in here I will say owner equals to username dot id. I mean current user dot id. Okay, so the reason I'm doing id, because if you remember from the db relationship that we created, we mark the relation between item and the user by its identifying number. So this is why I can allow myself to filter this out by current user.id. And this should be enough to bring all the items that the current user owns them. So now I will pass this as a context by saying owned underscore items equals to owned items, like that. Okay, so this really should be enough to go now to our market.html and start working on the implementation of how we want to display this. Okay, so if you remember, we have this call-8 which displays available items on the market, and right here we have div class 4, which is basically designed for displaying the items that the current user owns them. Now in here I can write some nice HTML code to really start working on the way that I want to design this. So we can say div class equals to row, and you will see in a second why I'm creating one more row under this column, and I can now start writing the iteration that we'd like to do probably. So we could say for owned item in owned underscore items, and we could close our expression like that, and right here I will say div class equals to call-md-6. Okay, so I will stop here and really explain why I did what I did. Okay, so by purpose we want to declare this as 6, because if you remember from the previous session that we created div class equals to row div element, we implemented the gridding system of Bootstrap. And the maximum size that you can locate an HTML element within a row is only 12. So this is why if I create 6 and there is more than 2 items, then each 2 items it has to force itself to jump down a row. And it looks nice if you display only 2 cards in a single row, so this is why I implemented this in that way. Okay, so right between those div tags, I'd like to paste some HTML code that will be responsible to create those bootstrap cards that I talked about. Now you can find the code that I'm going to paste it in my official website, so just navigate to the episode 16 of this entire tutorial. Okay, so I will paste this in here and explain what is going on here as well. So we have one more div tag that says card, text center and bg dark, so nothing really complex in here. And right after it we have the card body class, and right after this we have some class to display card title. So we could imagine that this code is responsible to display it probably in the up top of the card, and the button is basically made for the option to sell the item that the current user owns. And you can see the data toggle and data target as well, and you should be familiar with this if you watched the last episode. And here we have some paragraph that says additional text, so we could edit this by displaying some more text about this item. Okay, so if I save this file and go back to our website and refresh that out, then you can see what the code that we wrote is responsible for. And you can see that this is a really nice card that displays the item that the user owns. Now you can see that there are a lot of placeholders that we have to change them. So the way that we can change them is easily by going here and edit the text that we should edit them. Okay, so in the card title, we probably want to display the item's name. So it will be by accessing the variable block of Jinja, and we could say owned item, and this is actually accessible because of this for loop, and we could refer to the attribute of name of this item. And by doing this, this will be responsible to display laptop besides the placeholder that we saw previously. And we could leave the sell this item because this is the actual purpose of the button. And in the additional text, we could basically give a nice informative sentence that says something like the following. So this could be this item costs, and then we could refer to the price attribute. So it will be owned item dot price, and we could add a $sign right here. And by doing this, you can already guess that this is going to display the following line. So now things are looking a lot cleaner. And you can already see that if there is going to be more than 2 items in here, so this card would be located in here, and then the third card will have to force itself to locate in here. So this is why I went with the following approach. Okay, so from now each step that I will be configuring will be basically the same as we did for purchasing an item. So if you remember, in the last episode we also created in forms.py a form for sell item form as well. So this is why I'd like to create an instance of that and send it as a context to the routes.py as well. So it will be by going here and say selling form equals to sell item form, and this is probably not up top here as the import line, so we could say sell item form like that. And this selling form should be sent as context to the market.html as well. So down here we could send this like selling underscore form equals to selling underscore form like that. Now if you remember, when we implemented the purchasing item, we searched for request.form.get purchased underscore item because this was a reference to an input that its name was purchased item. So we will go back to this routes.py to really write Python code to perform action like for selling the item itself. Okay, so this should be enough for now in the routes.py. And now let's go ahead to our market.html and create a modal for selling an item like we did for purchasing. So I will open our market.html and I will also show you a kind reminder that in order to display a purchasing item modal, we created this items underscore modals HTML page. Now, to really have a nice separation between selling and purchasing, I'd like to create one more HTML file that we could name it something like owned items modals like that, and we could delete the auto generated HTML. And like I said, because the logic implementation is going to be quite the same, I can allow myself to grab the exact same modal from the purchasing item modal, and later on we could change some of the identifier strings or HTML text to make it dedicated for selling an item. Okay, so I will go to items underscore modals and I will copy the entire code under the purchase confirm and I will paste this in here. And if you remember, we had some special style for this modal as well. So I will grab the style tags and paste this in as a first line. Okay, so now this is some dirty job, but we have to do it. Okay, so let's go over the areas that we have to change from purchasing to selling or sell or something in that kind. Okay, so you could already notice that we have an identifier that says modal purchase confirm. So we could change this to selling confirm like that. And we can also change the comment in here to make it nicer. And if I scroll down a bit, then I think it is okay to leave the item name like that. And now in here, you can see that there is a reference to a hidden tag that comes from purchase form. And if you remember, we also initialized the selling form as well, so we could change this to that. And now here we have a sentence that says, are you sure you want to buy? So we can say, change this to sell. And in here we could say, by clicking sell, you will put this item back on market like that. Now you can already see the input inside this modal as well, and you can see that it has an identifier that says purchased item, so it totally makes sense to change this to sold item. Okay, so we created this in past tense, so we will leave it as it is, and this will be sold item as well, and we'd like to keep this in hidden and the value as the same. So again, we have this purchase form here, and this has to be selling form. And besides doing this success, we'd like to do is danger to really differentiate between the different actions. So one will be green and the selling will be red. Okay, so the close button that is here, we could leave it as it is, and that will be pretty much it. Now, if you remember, to trigger a modal, we have to trigger this identifier in here. So I will allow myself to copy this statement and to really start working on two separated windows to not confuse us, so we could really understand the further changes that we make from this point. So I will split our panes, and this will be by window, editor tabs, and we'd like to do this split vertically. And in the left pane, we will keep the owned items modals, and in the right pane, we will open the, not the items modal, excuse me, we will open market.html. Okay, so from here we are good to go. And let's scroll down a bit in here, and you can see that we have under call for some more things that we'd like to change in here. So we have this button, right? And this button is actually what responsible to trigger sell this item modal. And if you paid attention, we have here a data target that says your data target. Now this should be changed to something that is related with the owned item variable to really have a unique modal per item. So this is why I will make the owned items modal a little bit bigger, and I will change this to owned underscore item like that. And we should probably change all of those for all the places that we see item to owned item. So I will do that just in a minute, and that will be in here and as well as in here and also in here. And let's catch up if we have more of that. So to really make our lives easier in here, we could basically search for item, and we could pay attention that every item is with owned item right now. So we are good to go from here. And now I can really copy this identifier string and copy that out. And now I will make the market.html bigger, and we could paste this in right in here like that. And this should be pretty much enough to really see the modal itself when we want to sell an item. So now I can go to our website and we could refresh it, and if we click on sell this item, nothing happens. And this really means that we probably forgot something important, and this is why I will focus for a minute in what is going on in market.html and have a look in here. So in here we start our iteration, and yeah, I think it is because we did not trigger this include line. So if you remember, to really trigger the modal itself, it should be recognized as an HTML code in the exact same page. So this is why in each iteration we have to use this include in order to really have the modal implemented inside the for loop. So each item will trigger a separated modal regarding the information inside of it. So this is why I could go with something like this. We could grab the code from here and we could paste this in right under the for loop, and we should change this to owned underscore like that because we want to import the modals HTML that we have just now created. Now I want to have a look in owned items modals to really ensure that we don't have any leftovers with the owned underscore item because we iterate over a different variable name. So here we are good, and here we good as well, and as well as in here. And if we take a look in the input, okay, here we should also change this to owned underscore item as well. So I have a really nice trick that you can do for such a scenario where you want to make sure that you replaced all the variables with something. So you can basically use the Control F and search for a specific text in your entire page. Now if I search for double curly brackets and item, then you can see that we are good to go and nothing really exists with this expression. So we could now go to our page and refresh it out and test if this works. And you can see that the result is quite great. Now we see the title in here and we see the sentence, and this button currently will not do anything because we did not configure the functionality of this button. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so in the left pane we have our routes.py, and in the right pane we will work on some HTML code to display some differences. Now if you remember, the way that we grabbed the item that was attempted for purchasing in the previous sessions was by going to here and say request.form.get, and then we use the name of the input itself. So this really came from this name attribute of this specific input. Now if we take a look in owned on underscore items.modal, so I will put it in here, then we have an input with a name sold underscore item. So basically what we could do in routes.py, we could really implement the same logic for selling the item like we did in purchasing it. So I will close those and start working on the way that this should be implemented. Okay, so we could go after the if expression in here and start working on the area what happens if the user wants to sell the item. So to really differentiate between those, I'd like to add a comment here that says purchase item logic, and down here we could say sell item logic like that. Okay, so we can say here sold underscore item equals to request.form.get, and right here we could say sold underscore item. Now pay attention how I am keeping the same logic like in purchase. Okay, so once we have the sold item, then we probably want to grab the object of the item itself, because in here we only try to get the item's value itself. So we could say s underscore item underscore object equals to item dot query dot filter underscore by, and we could say name equals to sold underscore item, and we could hit the dot first method in here. Now, like in previous sessions, if this item object is going to be not null, then we can really start working on assigning this item to no one. So we could go ahead and say if s underscore item underscore object and hit the colon sign and enter this conditional. Alright, so now we probably want to look to execute some method that will ensure that the logged in user is really have an ownership on this item. So the way that we can do this is by creating a method in the user module. We could name it can underscore cell, and the can underscore cell will return a boolean variable true or false that will basically explain if the user has this item for real. So this will be by saying something like if current user dot can underscore cell, and we could pass the item object in here. Now I know that we don't have this method, but this is just in theory, so you can really understand the idea of how I'm going to implement this. Now again, you could pay attention how this is quite equal to what we did for purchasing the item itself. So if you remember, if we press here Ctrl B, then this can purchase returns a boolean variable that basically ensures that the user can purchase this item. So by creating a method that will say def can sell, and this will receive the item object one more time like that, we could really verify in here that the user really owns this item. And the way that we can do this is by the following expression. Now if you remember, up top here we have these items, which is basically responsible to be a reference for all the items that this user owns. So we could say return item underscore object in self.items, and this should be really enough to return us true or false, because if this item object is in self.items, then it means that the user really owns this item and he can sell it. So we could go back to here, and if we hit this conditional, again this is going to be the same approach like we did in item purchasing. So here we could execute again in theory something like s item object dot sell, and we again like to pass in here the current user object for this method, and this cell should do the exact opposite action from the buy method. So if we inspect inside buy, then you could see that first we assigned a new owner, and then we decreased the budget, and then we executed the db.session.commit. So the exact opposite of this method would be def cell, and we could receive the user object as a parameter, and we could say self.owner equals to none. So this is the exact opposite action of assigning an ownership. We assign the ownership to nobody. So we could say here again user.budget, and you could already guess what I'm going to do here. This time beside minus equals, this will be plus equals, because we want to give the money back, and this will be again for sure self.price, and again we can say here db.session.commit like that. Okay, so as we have done that, we can continue on the logic implementation. So I can go back to our routes.py, and after we perform this action, we could grab the flash from the conditional of purchasing and paste this in here, and we could change this a little bit. So we could say, congratulations, you sold s item object.name back to market. And I think this should be enough. Okay, back to market, and we could add an exclamation mark, and we could delete this, and we forgot to close the double quotes in here, and so this should be enough, and we will leave the category success as it is. Okay, so let's scroll left in here and go down. Now, if the user could not sell this item, then we probably want to raise a flash message that something went wrong and the user does not really own this item. So we could say else, and we could grab this from here and paste this in, and we could say in general something went wrong with selling, and we could refer to s item object dot name, and we could leave the category equals to danger as it is. Alright, so I think we are ready to test this out. Now I hope that the actions that we have taken in the last minutes made a lot of sense for you, because the selling implementation is pretty much the same like purchasing it, so this is why you saw a lot of copying and pasting stuff. So I hope that you understood everything pretty much clear, because from this point, if the selling item works properly, then it means that we finished everything with this website. So let's go ahead and see if this works great. So I will refresh our page, and we can now click on sell this item. And once I click on sell this item, then you can see that everything is pretty much working, and we see congratulations, you sold laptop back to market, and you can see that we have a new $1,000, and you can also see that the available items on the market is really updated with the information that it's supposed to. So this really means that the selling logic implementation is working perfect as well. Alright everyone, so I think this will close out our episode, and like I said in the beginning, the feedback of how this series was for you is really important for me, so I can really know what I should improve in the next series that I will be creating in the future. And I will be creating one more episode that will basically explain in general how you can deploy a Flask application to production, but this is not going to be specifically for this website. Basically, I will be creating a general video that will help everybody with their Flask projects, how they can deploy it on production. Alright, so if you like this video, please hit the like button and also consider subscribing to my channel if you already did not, and I will see you very soon.